All right, let's do this. We're about to take on what some people call the Mount Everest of philosophy, Hegel's Phenomenology of Mind. Now, I know it has a reputation for being insanely difficult, but it's also one of the most ambitious and honestly mind-blowing books ever written. So forget the reputation. We're going to tackle this together. So think about this for a second. What if you could read the life story, not of a person, but of the human spirit itself? That's exactly what Hegel is trying to do here. He's writing the biography of consciousness with a capital C, from its very first, most naive moments all the way to its ultimate self-discovery. This isn't just a philosophy book, it's an epic adventure. Okay, so let's set the stage. Every epic story needs a hero, right? Well, in this story, our hero is consciousness. And like any good hero at the beginning of their quest, it's a little naive, maybe a bit overconfident in what it thinks it knows about the world. So here's our hero's starting position. It's totally certain that it gets the world. It thinks, look, all I have to do is open my eyes. What I see is what's real. Simple as that. This immediate, rock-solid certainty is our starting line. But as you can probably guess, that confidence is going to get rocked. And hard. So what pushes our hero along on this journey? Well, Hegel has this idea of an engine, and he calls it the dialectic. Think of it like this. First, consciousness makes a claim about what's true. That's the thesis. But then, whoops, it finds a contradiction hiding inside its own idea, the antithesis. And that conflict, that breakdown, forces it to move up to a new, smarter, more complex truth, the synthesis. This constant cycle of claim, contradiction, and new understanding is what powers the whole story. It's how our hero grows up.
All right, round two. Here we go. Our hero, consciousness, feeling pretty good about itself, steps up to the plate to try and know the world. But, the world has a way of striking back. This is where things get really interesting.
Okay, so consciousness thinks, let's start with something super, super simple. Something I absolutely can't be wrong about. It points at something, maybe a tree, and just thinks, this. It is here, it is now. I mean, what could possibly be more certain than that, right? It feels like bedrock, the most solid foundation you could ever build on. Or so it thinks.
And boom, here's the first big plot twist. The second our hero tries to lock down that certainty, it hits a wall. See, to even think, this is here now, you have to use words, you have to use concepts. But think about those words. This could be anything, here could be anywhere, and now is always changing. The very tools it uses to point at one specific unique thing are actually universal. They're general terms. And that specific thing it wanted to grab just slips right through its fingers.
And that's the first big lesson of the journey. As Hegel says, that single specific thing just disappears and becomes a universal idea. Consciousness has its first big aha moment. Or maybe an uh-oh moment. It realizes, okay, I failed. But the problem wasn't the world out there. The problem was me. My whole approach was wrong. So it's forced to scrap its simple plan and try something new. So after that first failure trying to understand simple objects, consciousness has this huge realization. It figures out that to really understand itself, it needs a mirror. But not a regular mirror. It needs another person, another consciousness to see itself reflected. This is where things get really deep. The idea here is that you don't just figure out who you are all by yourself sitting in a room. Nope. Our sense of self is built in the messy, complicated world of other people. And for Hegel, this isn't just a friendly chat. It's a high-stakes life or death struggle for recognition. Each of us is desperate for the other person to look at us and acknowledge us as a free, independent person. And this struggle leads to one of philosophy's most famous scenes, what Hegel calls lordship and bondage. You might have heard it called the master-slave dialectic. So you have two people in this fight for recognition. The one who's willing to risk death for it becomes the lord. The one who backs down, who chooses life over that abstract freedom, becomes the bondsman. And at first glance, the lord has it all, right? He won. He gets the recognition, the power, and just gets to enjoy life.
But this is Hegel, so you know a twist is coming. And it's a huge one. Turns out the lord is totally dependent on the bondsman for his food, his shelter, everything. He doesn't actually do anything, so he never really grows. The bondsman, on the other hand, he's the one who's out there working, shaping the physical world, building stuff.
And in that act of working, something incredible happens. By taking his own ideas and making them real in the world, the bondsman sees his own power reflected back at him.
As Hegel says, he overcomes his dependence on just being a natural creature. He changes the world, and in changing the world, he discovers himself. Isn't that wild? The person who seemed to lose the fight is the one who actually walks away with the real prize. True, independent self-awareness. Okay, let's take a breath. Our hero has been through a lot. It failed to understand objects, then it struggled with other people and learned about itself. But the adventure's not over, not by a long shot. Now it's ready to zoom out and see itself as part of something way, way bigger, what Hegel calls spirit. Now, when you hear the word spirit, or Geist in German, don't think of ghosts or anything supernatural. For Hegel, spirit is the collective mind of a community. It's all the shared stuff, the laws, the traditions, the language that holds a society together. It's like the social DNA we're all a part of. It's the we that's bigger and more real than the individual I. And this isn't some abstract, floaty idea. You live in it, I live in it. It's right there in the structure of your family, the laws of your country, the social rules you just know without being told. It's the real, tangible world of culture and society that we all inhabit. So you see the shift? Our hero has leveled up. It's no longer just this lonely I trying to figure things out. Now it sees itself as a player in a much bigger game. It's a family member, a citizen, a piece of a huge historical puzzle. Its identity is now found in its role within the larger community. And here we are, the final act, the climax of this whole epic journey. Consciousness has been through the ringer. It's dealt with objects, with other people, with society. Now it's ready for the final stage, the ultimate prize, something Hegel calls absolute knowledge. So what is this final step? It's basically a moment of total self-reflection. Consciousness turns around and looks back at its whole life story, all the screw-ups, all the breakthroughs, all the painful lessons, and suddenly sees it all differently. It wasn't just a bunch of random stuff happening. It was a single, coherent story. Every step was necessary to get to this point. And this is the mind-blowing conclusion. Absolute knowledge doesn't mean you know every single fact in the universe. It's something much bigger. It's the realization that the structure of your own mind and the structure of reality itself are the same. The whole journey that consciousness went on to understand the world, that was actually the world's journey to understand itself, using our minds to do it. Let that sink in. The story of the world is the story of the mind. Our hero wasn't just watching the movie. Our hero was the movie. All of human history, all the art, science, and conflict, it's all been part of one giant process, reality itself waking up and becoming conscious of its own rational design. I mean, look at the language Hegel uses here. It's intense. He says that understanding history is like a recollection, but it's also a Golgotha, a place of immense suffering. What he means is that achieving this final understanding requires us to look back and accept all the pain, all the struggle, all the sacrifice that it took for spirit, for humanity to get to this point. It wasn't an easy ride. So, that leaves us with one last, massive question. Hegel's story kind of ends in his own time, but obviously the story keeps going. If all of this is true, if reality is this grand story the mind is telling itself, then what chapter are we living in right now? What are we writing with our lives, with our society, today? What's the next stage in this grand autobiography of the universe?